Well, we will call,
That's right.
call this meeting to order and talk about the item of special interest, which we are going to discuss the request for approval of County Economic Development Advisory Board recommendations. And essentially, we're sending a request into the state for them to give us a $200,000 grant, and we want to make sure we are able to utilize that money the way we would like to utilize the money. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean for the quick presentation.
Thank you, Council. I appreciate it. As you'll recall, the meeting on Tuesday evening, I came forward with 5 recommendations that I was asked to deliver on behalf of the Economic Development Advisory Board. And those have been suggested to be modified following a BRAG meeting on Wednesday. The 5 has now been seemingly trimmed down to 3. I want to make sure of that, so that I say seemingly because I'm looking for some clarification there as I've drafted some language that you see in front of you. Now, I think you may have had this forwarded to you. I had sent it to Carl and Paul, having both been at the, no? Okay, all right. Well,
I was just waiting for the update and when that
Can you print
comes.
this off real quick?
can I what?
Can you print it for us?
I can even read it aloud for you if you'd like. I've increased the font size a little bit here on the screen. I don't know if that
The bigger the font, the better.
Well, it's just that whatever we approve, like,
Dave and mine's age, we
I
like
want to
big,
make
don't we?
sure that that is the final. Like, it does, with all due respect, that it doesn't get tweaked after, fine-tuned. You know how you work on something like, oh, that one little word is wrong, but once it comes to us and we approve it, it's got to stay that way, and that's why that's why I'm asking if you can print this off for us so that we have a printed copy.
I have a printed copy. That was the original draft before Chairman Pro Tem had suggested the deletion of 2 words in this draft.
Yeah, could we do that? Could we get a copy of that?
Sure, you bet.
Then you can, yeah,
Janine
thank you
will
so
make,
much.
5 or 6 copies. That would be great. So that being said, that is actually what you see on the screen with the modification that Paul had asked for, which takes, if you don't mind, I guess I'll just read this real quickly. I'll be able to read it before she comes back. Cache County Council proposes to use Rural County Grant, or RCG funding, towards 3 objectives. The first is increased regional collaboration of economic development activities. County leaders have agreed in principle to forge a partnership with neighboring Box Elder and Rich counties using an established framework of the Bear River Association of Governments, or BRAG. This partnership will combine individual economic development, or ED, efforts, sharing both financial and human resources in an effort to create efficiency, as well as to coordinate business creation, retention, and attraction activities towards a regional perspective. ED personnel, again, economic development personnel, would operate as a coordinated team, sharing their skills and experience among all BRAG counties. Thus, Cache County Council proposes to use up to $150 of the fiscal year 23 RCG funding towards their proportionate cost of in-county ED work under the shared framework. The other counties in BRAG would also make contributions towards the collective costs. Proposed activities of the regional approach would be traditional methods of development and update of local economic development strategic plans, identification and marketing of assets and parcels for development, retention of existing businesses, targeted recruitment efforts as directed by local leaders within each county, and working with relevant stakeholders to develop infrastructure and workforce elements to ensure continued economic success within our communities. Successful implementation would reflect increases in job creation, taxable values, parcel count, rates of home ownership, median income, and other traditional metrics. Other objectives of this year's RCG application are creation of a county-wide economic development website to provide relevant industry, workforce, and site data for both existing and prospective employers, and amplify new business creation in partnership with Bridgerland Technical College's Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, with financial support for remodeling a newly acquired building.
So I have a question on this. Thank you for reading it. If we go with BRAG and get economic development at BRAG, who's going to do this economic development website for us, and do we need one individual as a county? If we're going region-wide, wouldn't it be a regional
It's a great
approach?
question. So I've spoken with Roger. Roger, the executive director of Bragg, since the meeting on Wednesday, and he said they had just updated theirs. Now, I'll be honest, I've been worried about this, working on this in addition with some other things that are already on the calendar, so I haven't poured over their website and note, what it was before or what it is today. That said, though, this county doesn't have one. So this county doesn't have anything that specifically targets the sites that are available or any of our particular metrics, not within the county's website. So I'm open to write this however you'd like. I wrote it with the idea that it's general enough that it could apply to either. However, think of this way. This is this county's application for these funds, and the other counties are directed / encouraged, I'll leave that to Paul and Carl to kind of parse words there, to do the same with their applications, which are also due by day's end today. I've spoken with Commissioner Summers following the meeting on Wednesday. I also spoke with Eden Johnson. Eden Johnson is my liaison with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I let her know that the direction that was provided at Wednesday's Bragg meeting, and triple checked, because I'd already doubled before the meeting, triple checked that this application could be this county's request for, of the maximum of 200,000, that the suggested up to 150 would be your portion towards the pot, right? That those two other counties would therefore be presumed to be making their own allocation, in addition to Bragg. Bragg has an economic development person right now whose job is not predominantly paid for by these, like my position is here, and has other sources through Bragg. So the idea would be that this would be this county's proportionate cost share, if you will, for economic development activities in the manner described on Wednesday. Box Elder and Rich would modify their applications to make sure they have some sort of contribution financially to the pot, and Bragg would use, I presume, the existing funding they get through the Economic Development Administration, or EDA, for Brian Carver's position, as example, and a portion of Laura Gale's position, as example, because Box Elder does make a significant contribution financially for Laura Gale's position.
Is Box Elder and Rich both up to speed on this so that they're making an application just like us?
Well,
I will
and,
defer.
yeah, and I just want to have Carl, I want to check with him to make sure, because he was at that meeting, and hopefully this represents what was discussed. If you want to talk to Gordon about his question too.
Yeah, it does, and yes, they are, both counties are definitely involved or on board. Box Elder County in particular, they're very anxious to see a regional approach to economic development, and it's our understanding that looking at it regionally also gives us better leverage in getting these grants than if we were just to do it.
Doesn't it fit
Single
more
county.
in line with what really the kind of the state's wanting regional type?
Yep.
So it kind of falls right in line with what they want, what they're looking for too.
Yeah.
We've had, I think, 2 or 3 presentations from the state this year at Bragg, where they've been really pushing this regional collaboration. Where a couple years ago, they started up different grants, which is why we did the economic development here a couple years ago and funded it to take advantage of those grants. And now that the state is pivoting, we want to make sure that we're moving in lockstep with what the state's trying to do.
And we have really an outstanding organization in Bragg to help us move this thing forward. And ironically, the Box Elder County people, they are being approached by Weber County all the time to try and get them to join in with Weber County. And the way that Jeff put it, he said, you're on the Wasatch Front, and we are not. We don't fit in with your idea of economic development at all, but we're much more in tune with Cache County and Rich County.
And that was Jeff Scott, County Commissioner Box Elder.
Yeah.
Yes.
That still doesn't quite answer my question about what to do about this website.
Okay.
I'm still not sure who would create it, or if it seems to me that it would be something that would need to be written in to be able for Bragg to do. If we're going to shift our economic development to Bragg, then they should be the one creating the website. Share it with Cache County or something like that, so that, because that's where that economic development is going to be, correct?
Well, one of the
What am
things
I
that we were,
missing? What do
what
I
we
know?
were
What am I
talking about, and the reason the website's there, it was really, I think, championed by, most of all, Mark Alexander, over at Bridgerland. And he was talking about, the Cache County itself doesn't really have this economic development landing page that's kind of our very own. So, as I see these two things based on those conversations, in my mind, we could utilize a lot of the services from Bragg to do most of the day-to-day blocking and tackling of economic development, the meetings, those type of things. But us, Cache County ourselves, that when somebody goes to search Cache County in particular, or they go to our website, our county website, and look for an economic development link, we would want that link to be there, so they can click on it and see what's available just here.
Okay,
And it's more not for, it's more of a poll type thing, so as somebody's looking for Cache County economic development specifically, they find it with us, and then as those conversations start, we loop Bragg in to do that. And so this would give us the money to be able to maybe put into Bart's budget to, improve the website itself, and then the content probably can be developed in conjunction with Bragg.
Well, the important thing is, in order to get this money, Sean has to have his grant application in today. That's why we had to call this special council meeting in order to hit that deadline. And we spent a lot of time talking about this on Wednesday, didn't we?
There was robust conversation.
Yep.
I like that term, I'm gonna use that now.
okay, I'm still a little confused about who would do it at the county.
Gina, excuse me, Madam Councilwoman. It's envisioned that it would be a third-party contractor that would actually perform the work, those that specialize in websites specifically.
Unknown caller.
However, who would oversee that could be whatever kind of personnel expectations you're having from that $150,000 amount, right? Whether that be through Bragg or internally, whatever.
Okay.
I really appreciated how Chairman Pro Tem mentioned it, though, because just having Bragg alone, if someone's searching for Cache County, so in the course of the time that I've been here, there have been requests for information or RFIs that come through either dominantly through EDC Utah or other means. And these entities will be thinking because they want to be close to Shriver's, because they want to be close to Lauer Foods, because they want to be close to typically something they've already researched very broadly puts our location on a short list. Only having an umbrella of Bragg where it does more than just economic development would not be my advice to you, because you'd want something to be very specific that shows what Cache Valley or Cache County has to offer versus Box Elder or versus Bear Lake area, okay? It doesn't mean that we're trying to trump them in a collaborative sense. It just means that if someone's already put us on a short list, we want to deliver them information that's germane to us, not germane to something 50 miles away to the east, or out in Grouse Creek in Box Elder County. So irrespective of this bigger play I feel from, these discussions for regional collaboration, you'd still want to have something that says from, Cove to Avon, here's what you could expect for unemployment, because that's not the same as it is in Rich County or Box Elder. For example, right now, as of the end of August, we're at 1.8% unemployment. 1.4% unemployment is what Rich is at, and Box Elder's at 2.0 even. So there are those differences by county, right? You wouldn't just want to make it an umbrella. I can play both sides of that coin by also telling you part of what Councilman Ward mentioned. The Northern Utah Economic Alliance is an alliance of only Weber and Davis County. And I think you guys probably know to varying degrees more than I do about how they came and solicited Cache County and Box Elder County, as well as Morgan and Rich, to join their effort. And what their effort was a way to try to compete head-to-head with Utah County. And by creating their own microcosm, their own region across two counties in this case, they crossed the threshold of the magical number of 500,000 people. Because even one independently was not 500,000 people. But Utah County is, but Utah County is not quite 1 million. And so, again, there are searches that companies will do to think about where they might want to land for expanding west of the Mississippi or expanding inland from, the West Coast. And so they'll do some of those cursory searches already. But if they know that they need 500 workers, they're not gonna look to come to a community of only 12,000 people. That's just unrealistic expectations of trying to get that many of 12,000 people to be their complete employment base. So they have these metrics for a reason. In-N-Out Burger will only come to a place that has 65,000 people within, as the crows flies distance, and they must be at a signalized intersection. Those are their internal determinations. They get to make those rules, we don't. But the more information that we and our partners have easily discoverable for them on something like a website, the more they know whether or not we stay on that short list of possible places they would look for. I know that was a long-winded explanation, but it kind of goes hand in glove, I think, with what Paul is noting. So I
Thank
think
you.
it could go either way.
Thank you, and I think that, like, if it needed to go to a third-party contract, which is a good idea, that maybe the Economic Development Advisory Board can make a recommendation to council for that approval, and that's the route that it would take. I'm trying to think of process of how that would fit in and how that would work, so
I think that's great.
thank you for the explanation, appreciate it.
Any other questions, concerns? Carl, you need to add any more color to the meeting? I think you did a good
No,
job.
I think this is a positive step forward for our entire region. And where we don't have the ability to pull them in directly, we also talked about, our region includes Franklin County. I mean, the population is up there to bring workers in. It also, a lot, people come here from Franklin County to shop and to add to our economy, and they're part of economic development. And Bragg has reached out. Last year we had a really good meeting where we had representatives from Malad and from Preston and Franklin and other parts of southern Idaho to join with us in looking at this from a regional perspective. And as Sean pointed out, the population numbers that they can draw from have a big impact on their decisions to locate here, to either come here as an employer or come here as a provider. And so it's I think this is really will be a benefit to our county.
I agree with that. I think this regional approach is great for the reasons that you stated. We really do function that way with each other. We are really an economic group as it is, and it would be good to make that cohesive, have somebody guiding and directing
Well,
that
and
at a core
we are
place.
so fortunate to have Sean. This guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it would be great. I think it's a really good move.
Yeah, and if we do it, this is one of those rare, everybody talks about win-win. I never quite see both win-wins, but I think this is the case where not only can we combine together, do it at a regional level through Bragg, but it eliminates a lot of the redundancies that all three counties would have by having to carry the full cost of it on their books and have it in triplicate. We could do it in one, each contribute a smaller portion that we'd have to on our own. If we did it by ourselves, we'd be bigger and we'd be able to get it at a less cost to each of the counties.
This is probably the first time I've ever heard anyone talk about using Malad, and we've heard of Preston before, but to be able to use it as a regional population can attract a large employee, because my wife's got several people that she works down there at Gosner's with, and they're from Weston and Preston and those places, so we should include them in anything we do economically development, because not only what Carl said, they come down here to shop, but they also come down here to work. And we should be concerned about taking care of them as well as ourselves.
This warms my heart, if only because I'm a geek about this sort of thing. And what I love about the last few minutes is this. You know, Costco, for example, to come here at the same time that Sam's Clubs already exist, they do that because of regional draw, right? They're coming because folks from Tree Mountain are gonna be counted as part of their radius. Their radius is much further out than In-N-Out Burger, right? Folks aren't likely to drive an hour and a half in order to get to an In-N-Out Burger, but they will for something where they're doing bulk shopping. Well, most folks. But that said, you know, they're drawing from Preston. In-N-Out Burger's not counting Preston or Franklin's numbers. I love the recognition of Franklin County, for example. 52% of their adult-aged population, so the workforce that could be, 52% of that number comes into the Utah side of the border every day to work. And dominantly, most of those stay here in our county. So for that reason, you know, it is regional. I had the pleasure and honor to host a friend who's a Bannock County Commissioner a few weeks ago, and he brought some of his staff down to learn kind of what makes us special, because as you likely know, Bannock County's southern limits are actually the northern limits of our valley geographically. And while it's not Swan Lake, what is it? Well, anyway, you know what I'm talking about, those furthest most communities here. We impact them, they impact us, right? And the ability to recognize that is a wonderful thing. And by having Costco here, because some people are very brand loyal, there are residents I've heard from since the announcement that they're coming to Logan, that they said they don't like Sam's Club. This isn't a knock about one brand or another. It's just the reality that people behave according to their loyalties, and some of them will drive out of our county and spend that sales tax dollar somewhere else. And so it benefits their school district, their city, their county. The more we have that kind of activity that's here and we think about it collectively like that, it is a really good thing. So I do love the nature of this conversation, and even after today's adjournment, I hope that we can have conversations like these to see where you'd like that kind of activity to go.
This growth isn't cheap.
No.
Now, we get them here, but just for example, try to get cement since Costco's been built.
Or FedEx.
You know, Costco has all but drawn in almost every cement company, even across the valley or across the mountain. And people are just, well, not building a house today, not pouring a pad today.
That's right. They got that all built by November of this year,
And it's kept
which is
prices.
impossible.
It's kept
Just from
cement
cement.
prices up and everything.
Yeah.
So Costco's costing me a lot of money. But
Oh, I love where this conversation goes about supply side
But, you know, the whole,
economics too.
you know, when you see the big picture of it down the road, the biggest thing I'm always concerned about is I hate these companies, not Costco, but I just hate some companies that come in and then they bring their workforce with them and don't utilize the sons and daughters that are growing up here for their workforce. They say they want the workforce, but then all of a sudden you see this big California influx of their workforce. And that's what just drives me crazy and you know what, some of those companies, I say, no, stay out of here. If you're gonna use from within, build from within, that's trippy. You know, if we can build up our education, build up our, you know, our quality of abilities, you know, that we can bring in and lure those higher tech operations, but then use the people that are already here. I say wonderful, but not to come here and then bring their people with them.
I love that. I feel like I just gotta say this. If I'm doing my job or someone in this position is doing it correctly, I would not advise you to just take someone who's only gonna take from this community, right? When I presented those CRAs a couple of months ago now, the whole presumption is that they do three things. One, they either increase property taxes or sales tax, and they increase our median wage, and they hire local people, right? Our local existing base of people that Councilman Erickson was just alluding to are, of course, our talent. It's why you do what you do. You're doing it for the residents here, not the residents somewhere else. And so we want to give existing parents the opportunity for upward mobility. We want to give that new entrant to the workforce or a part-timer that's at the university that opportunity. And so it is about providing something for the locals. Now, of course, it gets complicated when it's all about a balance of that, right? Sometimes they'll bring a management team from out of state in order to develop a locally grown management team and hand over the keys in about 6 or 12 months after they open. Sometimes it's more immediate, like with In-N-Out. They did have a management team that was here, helped our hotel tax for a bit. You know, they train them for about a month and then they leave and it's a management team that's here. So sometimes it is temporary, sometimes it's a little bit more long-served. But regardless, the aggregate effect of whatever it is they're doing should definitely increase our property values. Remember, as I read off that narrative, that's one of the metrics about successful economic development. It's kind of a catch-22 for those of us that are about small limited government. But when you increase the parcel count, it's presumably because you've had subdivisions. And subdivision shows growth, whether residential or commercial. And likewise for your workforce. You want to make sure that you're enriching your own workforce. So I really appreciate what Councilman Erickson said. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the request for the County Economic Development Advisory Board's recommendations.
As indicated on this scope of work.
On the scope of work.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Oh, sorry. The motion was we move to approve the scope of work as presented, and that scope of work came from our Economic Development Advisory Board. All in
Any other
favor?
discussion?
Any other discussion?
Nope. I just helping him out.
Thank you. I need
I've
it.
only got
I
about
need
three
it.
more, I only
Keep-
got about 3 months to train him, and so
I've
I'll
always,
help him.
I've always maintained I need adult supervision. I just never knew the adult was gonna be Gordon. So, there we go. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yeah.
Okay.
And with that, we will adjourn. The business has been accomplished.
Now, you are one good vice chair. Look how fast you did